Good morning. Great morning. Well, it is now. Do we have an expanded use case description for each of the events? Each of the use cases, you mean? Well, let me triple check. So I'll make sure I tell you the right thing. SRS. So it should be just for one of your use cases. So got way too many Chrome windows open. This is not good. I literally have 4 separate Chrome instances open with tabs in all of them. God. 1, 2, 3, 4 I just minimized. All right. Where is my slider? Yay, overachieving is so much fun. Yeah, so basically, select one diagram and create a use case description. So you should just need to pick like one use case and write out use case description. One of your diagrams and create a use case description. Yeah, just one use case is good. I'm reading the wording, it's a little bit vague. As I say the diagram's the whole thing, but then I just say a single use case description, so just one. Yep. Good question. All right. Time to close down these fat beats. The problem is I keep playing these Zelda chill hops to get up and running in class, and makes me sad that I still haven't beaten Breath of the Wild. It's just disappointing. Maybe this summer, he said, knowing full well what summers entail for professors. All right, we ended right here. So welcome back. Hope that you're all good and raring to go with the time change. It is throwing me for a loop. There is not going to be enough coffee in the day today for me, but that is separate. So just as a reminder, you have your requirements and use case diagrams due by tonight. So basically just, again, submit a link to your team's Git repository. That way I know that you have submitted the assignment. And I will go through those and give you all the feedback as well. So yeah, we have that. And we also have, as a reminder, announcements. So Wednesday we'll do a Zoom session, so we will not have a stream, it will be over Zoom. The link is in, again, class session, or not class sessions, it's in course information. And don't need that anymore. Here we go. So basically, I'm trying to get everybody to go in just one day. That's why I'm not looking for too much detail, but just 5 to 6 minutes per team, because I think we have 8 teams in total. Just tell everybody what your idea is, where you're at with the project, what do you have to do for your next step, and then anything if you want to show, you're more than welcome to as well. What I will do is I will have a short feedback form for basically you all to fill out, and I will share that with everybody. So kind of looking for constructive criticism. You know, does the idea sound good? Does it sound feasible? Obviously, we're in the second half of the semester now, so we are starting to ramp up on implementation and things like that. And I think what else I want to talk about. Yeah, just kind of a quick, I guess, elevator pitch is the correct term for this. But I'd like everybody to be on board since, you know, we're not in class together. You can't see what everybody else is doing. And it's kind of a nice way to do that. Plus, it helps me keep in mind where you're at scope-wise, because it's very easy to go off the rails with these things. As a point of reference, I've been playing around with a little hobby project in JavaScript and Twine, which is a dialogue or a story generating engine. And I'm about 3 months into playing around with it, and I'm starting to consider a new library just because some things aren't worth it in Twine, which would require an overhaul. And that's not the kind of scope thing you want to deal with late in the project. Anyway, so homework due tonight, presentations Wednesday. And then I'll have your next assignment after your presentations. So that's all I want you to focus on, rather than have 30 things going on at once. All right. Questions at all? One thing that I have gotten from students, and I apologize if I'm misremembering if you're going to be here or not. If for some reason you can't make it on Wednesday, you can do a video and just send that to me beforehand, and we can figure that out. But I know there was some people that weren't going to be here, some people that were, um, and then I think I changed the week that we're doing this because of the midterm, and. So just get a hold of me if you're planning on not being around. Anyway, let's talk about project management. So we ended here with the critical path method. And just as a recap, because we kind of didn't really gloss over it, but we went through it quickly. We're just trying to find basically the minimum amount of time for a project to be successfully completed. There will be activities and milestones where we have extra time that we can play with. That's called our slack time. You know, if we say that a project is going to take 3 months, it only takes 2. We have 1 extra month of slack time that we could, you know, use to do other things. But that's where we ended off here. Now, this is where the discussion gets fun, because people who have worked, people who have interned, basically, if you have any industry experience, you're going to look at a chart like this, and this is called a Gantt chart, and you're going to groan or cringe or roll your eyes. You know, obviously I can't see what you're doing right now, but this is the dinosaur method of project planning. And the takeaway is that this is what I had to do when I was working. But this is kind of the waterfall V model, the older style of tracking your project progress. Basically, what we have here is we've got a list of our tasks. We have some high level kind of activities that we've got going on here. And then we just are going to draw out how long each particular task is going to take. And we're going to do it row by row. And by lining up our task timings, we're going to see what is going to be done when. And we have some extra little designators here. Here's when the task starts, here's when it's supposed to finish. The little diamond we can call slippage, meaning that it's probably going to slip by that much, or we're going to plan for it to slip. You can get really, really deep into this. At a very high level, you're just looking at what tasks do we have, how long is it going to take, when is it starting, when is it ending, and who is attached to that. Now, anything wrong with this particular model? If you maybe have an idea or if you've dealt with this before. It's all gone. No. I guess first question, has anybody ever used a Gantt chart before? Nope. Okay, well that's good. Fresh experience. That means I can mold your pliable brains to accept the Gantt chart as the best thing in the world. Basically, these days with everybody kind of going agile, this is not a good thing to do. I showed this to my grad class because there is some overlap with the materials. Basically, project planning, project management. There's it was 641, systems analysis and design, where we also talked about planning, and I showed this to them. And a lot of them are currently, working in this industry, and there were literal groans over the Zoom session. It was wonderful. Almost as good as a well-delivered dad joke. Anyway, one thing that we have here is that it is very easy to game the system with a Gantt chart. So let's say that we are all working on a project. I have all of you, developing tasks. You're all doing something in parallel, and somebody can't make it this week, and their task is going to be overdue. Well, I could just change the start date and throw everything off. And really, at the end of the project, we're going to look at things. We're not going to know that history. We are not going to know that we started shifting things around kind of behind the scenes. And this is the cynical, jaded view of this, where I, as the project manager, can kind of tweak things to make us look good. And okay, so we were a little bit over time. Things happened along the way, but we didn't realize that things got moved around. Basically, just with this kind of a approach, it's very easy to game the system. It's also very easy to kind of overmanage, to undermanage. It's basically not a great way of tracking progress. Now, it is fine for simpler things, but it can become very cumbersome to work with over time, as these things get very, very bulky. Just kind of, pros and cons here. Also keep in mind too that if you're working in an agile environment where things are going to be changing on a daily basis, having a graph that's set in stone of, okay, today you are starting on the GUI and you are finishing that by the end of the week, whether you like it or not, that's not a great way to do development in a flexible environment. Waterfall V model, that's probably fine because there's not a whole lot of flexibility there, right? But flexible environments, this isn't really amenable to change unless we start doing sneaky things behind the scenes to pass your little milestones. And then I come and I look at your project and I glare at you and say, you should not be doing this. Bad. But yeah. And the other fun thing I can talk about here too is that when I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as a young graduate student many years ago now, I thought, and this was me coming right out of industry, I did my master's while I was working, and I then quit and started my PhD, and I thought, I know what I'm going to do. Every single PhD student I've known has gone insane with the amount of work they have to do. I'm going to track my time in a Gantt chart. And I did that for a week, and then I stopped because things changed so quickly that I couldn't keep up with it. Anyway, let's play around with a little bit of a Gantt chart software here. So I downloaded this one on my computer. This is called Gantt Project. This is actually the same one that I used in 2010, 2011, whenever it was that I started. And I tried this thing out. So this is a nice open source bit of software if you want something local. There are online versions as well of various, Gantt charts and things like that. There are blogs out there to show you how to do one in, say, Excel or Google Sheets, if you would like to go that route. But we've got this one here. So I've got a task that I created. Okay, and I can say properties. So what is the task? Let's say implement GUI. Begin date, what's today, March 15th? And I'm going to say it's going to take 7 days. Priority, I can set a priority. Progress, show in timeline, sure. I can set colors. I can set ancestors and I can set children. So basically we can have tasks that depend on each other. Like if I'm implementing the GUI, one of you could then implement the backend login logic after the GUI was done or something like that. I can set who is attached to this thing. And here is my task. And if I do another task and another task, I should be able to, where's my arrow? No, I guess I have to do it in properties. Thought I could just drag it for some reason. Let's say this one starts the 26th. And then I can set a dependency like that. So I'm just kind of, again, I'm not saying that this has to be the way you do things, but it's kind of one way. And we get a nice little visual here. Now I need a resource. Let's say Professor Fredericks. Sure, let's go formal. 8675309 because references are still good to make. Days off. I don't get any days off. I'm a professor. Standard rates. 1,000 times my base salary. Perfect. So I have a resource now. I can see I'm in here. Say I'm in charge of the GUI because I want to work on the GUI. Add me. Okay, so now I am tasked with the GUI. Here is my workload. All right, task 2. I could create another resource. Who has been chatty this morning? Let's go Boar, Mako, and Ganzatron, since you two are chatting. All right, you are in charge of task 2. And Owen, you're in charge of task 3. Now, poor Mako can't do his job until the 24th because he's waiting on me to deliver my work. And our Ganzatron, you're just going to be working forever. So, simple Gantt chart, right? We see dependencies, we see who is attached to what. If I look at my resources, I can very quickly see when my team is busy, when they're overloaded, when they're not doing anything, right? At this point in our talk, we are kind of all putting on the project manager hats, right? We are trying to figure out how to structure a project so that it can be successful. And being able to plan things out is a very, very, very necessary tool to have in your tool belt. But just like with picking the process, you can pick your management model as well, right? If you're going for something that is more rigid in nature, a Gantt chart is perfectly fine, right? We set this thing up once. Maybe if the customer comes back to us while we're negotiating with them and we're refining our requirements and our various models, we can update this as we go. But then we check this project in, and ideally it's set in stone. Now, if something changes, we go back in, we update some of our fields here, things start slipping, things take longer, then we start to see how issues can kind of cascade and exponentially get worse in here. Right, let's say that I end up screwing up the GUI and it takes me an extra solid week to do. Well, that pushes task 2 back because this one can't be handled until this one's done. And then if there is a dependency from this onto this, we're even pushed farther back. So here we see critical tasks, we see deadlines, and we see resources. But I still like this approach, honestly, because it's simple. It's kind of a nice artifact that you can check in. Okay, with that we have a resource histogram. So this is basically, so it's a histogram, so it's a different view of what we saw in Gantt chart here, or Gantt project, sorry. But we see where employees are working and where they're not busy. And we can look at this by person, we can look at it by, work month, we can look at it by week, by day, whatever your axis you want to set is going to be. But we can figure out, hey, is our team doing anything in January? If not, maybe we reassign them to some other tasks to keep them busy. But here, let's say in August, June, July, August, September, we are in overload status, meaning that we're probably into some kind of crunch time because we didn't plan appropriately over here. A lot of you gave some fun answers on the exam about planning and things like that, and you referenced Cyberpunk. You referenced various games where crunch time and poor management basically resulted in a bad launch day project, right? Well, if you look at a resource chart kind of like this, you can very easily see, if we are getting into overloaded status slash crunch time, we're probably going to have problems. It's pretty obvious if you look at it that way, right? You push people to overwork, you're probably going to underdeliver. Even if you do hit that deadline, it's not going to be perfect. And then you're going to spend all this extra time here fixing issues. But just kind of the key takeaway of the figure like this is understand what your team is doing. If you have somebody who's not working on anything, consider reassigning them so that they're not sitting there twiddling their thumbs waiting for you to tell them what to do. And again, this is you, the project manager, not you, the intern, telling everybody else what to do. Other things we can do here too, though. So I'm kind of going at this from a, deliverable perspective. We could also consider this from a project team makeup perspective. So at one point we talked about the different roles that we need for teams, right? We need quality people, we need engineers, telling the CEO they need to work better. There you go. Well, the thing with the crunch time deliverables is that there is probably a well-created plan at some point. Due to bugs or whatever reason, that plan probably slipped. And then the people higher up refused to accept the slippage. And they said, nope, you have to get it out on the agreed upon date. That's most likely the way it works. I guess, but on the other side of things here too, this could be looking at tasks from a role-based perspective. So maybe this is our development work. Okay, so starting in January, and Google's kind of hiding it here. But, at this stage of the project, this might be all requirements engineering and customer interaction. So we don't need as many developers early on in the project. We bring them on later on, right? So we bring them on here where we start actually implementing things. And then towards the end, we start tailing off. Whereas this figure, if we're looking at it from, say, a software engineering perspective where we're developing requirements, we're developing models, things of that nature, we'd be a lot more loaded up at the front end and we would kind of tail off this way. Again, just kind of depends on your perspective and what you're actually looking at and what the figure is actually telling you. And this is basically another view of that as well. So are you a designer, developer, tester? We can plan out who is going to be needed. And this is a very, very, very detailed look for which day we need you, and how many people we need. But here at the start of, say, a 7-day project, we need the designers earlier on, and we need the developers later, and then the testers even later. So figuring out your resources is kind of a very good thing to manage as a project manager. All right, questions so far? Gantt charts make sense? If you have questions on Gantt charts, now is a good time to ask because your next assignment will be doing some project planning. Right. One other thing we have to deal with is expenditures. So it's that horrible thing that we hopefully don't have to worry about until we get into the upper management side of things, but we might care about how the money's being spent. And what does money entail for a business? Well, you have to pay your employees, you have to pay contractors, pay licensing fees, office rental space, any union fees for any people working in your building, in your facilities department, or any kind of a cost could be rolled into a project. So it's not just I'm going to start developing. If I'm managing a project, I'm also managing salaries, health insurance, everything that goes with that. And that's an example of how much a project can cost. And this is going to be irksome here. Let me see if I can. Okay. Ba, ba, ba. Don't know why my shortcuts don't work when we're full screen anymore. Please come back. Please come back. Oh, now you're not going to do this. There you are. Don't move. Don't move. Gotcha. Haha. There you are. Go away, Google bar. Except now I can't make it full screen. Oh well, that's fine. Sometimes that bar just pops up and gets in the way. Anyway, we are here. So we can also keep track of how much we are spending on a month by month, week by week basis. Again, whatever level of detail we need to track, but we could say plan out how much we're going to spend month by month. Right? At the beginning of the project, costs are pretty low. As we go on, we start seeing costs rise, and we can see them rise at varying rates depending on what we're doing. From January to March, we have a very quickly, linearly increasing line, right? Maybe we are bringing on various engineers, requirements engineers, maybe they cost more, just kind of depends. From March to August, March to September, we see that slope kind of ease up. Maybe we don't need as many people on the project. Maybe we don't need to pay a particular licensing fee or something like that. And we're kind of planning out this thing or this budget. And that would basically be let's populate a bunch of spreadsheet lines with how much we expect this month to cost. And then October rolls around and we ramp up into delivery time, we ramp up into release. We need testers, we need maybe to plan out for some contractors if we need to kind of buff out the project. Just kind of depends. But we are planning for these things. And then you track that against actual cost. Oh crap, in January we are way over budget. But then January through June, we're under budget. To August, we are currently over budget. These are the kind of things that a project manager would look at, a business manager, or whatever your role name is if you're dealing with money, and you'd say, SHIT, we're way over budget. We are going to get in big trouble for this. How can we cut costs for the next several months to get back to where we need to be? So it's kind of this interesting push and pull relationship that you can kind of end up with here. But again, one other metric to be mindful of as you develop your projects. All right, so this is Gantt charts, histograms, looking at expenditures. Obviously for you all, we're not going to be doing this in class since you don't have any money to deal with. We're going to care more about resource planning and effort expenditure. On the flip side, we have Agile. And here, this is kind of the current commonly accepted way of tracking your timing, tracking your planning. Can we get money to work with? That's kind of an interesting idea. I should probably not this year, but that'd be a fun idea. Next semester I'll give everybody 1 million professor bucks to spend throughout the semester. Hmm, that could be fun, actually. I'll give it all to you in Bitcoin. Does that work? Anyway, I would spend mine to contract you. Ooh, I wanted real money from the school. You don't want to contract me. My my resource, I'm currently in overload status. I would be a burden. Plus, I'm a professor. We don't know how to code, right? The fun thing is that recently, so I've got smaller kids, and I started giving them like little fake money to learn about how money works and all that, and they've been having a blast with it. At first, they wanted real money to like spend on candy and stuff, and then they realized they could get 100 dad bucks, and life is awesome with that. I like professor bucks. I might have to consider this. Okay, in fairness, some don't. Fair enough. So, in the agile perspective, we don't like Gantt charts. Okay, if we have an agile based process, again, this all can go out the window very, very quickly. Your requirements can change on a daily basis, which is why in agile, we don't necessarily, and it kind of depends. You might write your requirements at the end, and you might be dealing with things like user stories along the way. Little postcards that you put up on the wall, and I'm going to work on this today, right? Things can change. Maybe a card falls down and we forget about it till the end. Gantt charts are not very, very flexible. But what we can do is do something called a burn down or a burn up chart. Now, this is the other perspective. And they're two very different kind of looks at how effort can be expended. But it's kind of a simplistic view of what we have to work on. So if you are going to do, one of these charts, you'd more than likely pick one. You don't necessarily need to do both, but they give different viewpoints. So the burn down chart is basically the number of work typically this is measured in, say, user stories that have to be worked on. It could be the number of tasks. It's basically how much effort you have. So if we're counting this as user stories, here we're starting with 10. And as we check them off, we move them to the completed section of our board. We go down. So we're burning down, basically. So as the months go by, here are the user stories we've worked on. Here are the tasks we've worked on. We see them decreasing towards 0. On the other side, we have a burn up chart. So basically, we're starting at 0 and we're going up to the amount of effort that we have to do. Now, the burn up chart has an extra line here, and that's the scope. So basically, the scope is your anticipated number of tasks. And I say anticipated again because this can change, right? We can add new user stories as we go if we need. We can add new requirements from the customer that we have to deal with. So we see here, let's say our burn down chart, we're starting at 10, we're going down, going down, going down, then we're stuck at 6 for a few months. Any idea what happens at this point in time where we have this kind of plateau? So again, the chart on the left there is work remaining. A break or a lot of meetings? So break or a lot of meetings, a tough part in the project to code. I'm going to say yes to both of those, honestly. We don't know with this perspective. All we know is that the number of remaining tasks remained constant. But more than likely, either something happened that it was very hard and it took us longer than we expected. I guess maybe this is even expected, it just kind of depends. But for whatever reason, the number of remaining tasks remained constant. Either it was really hard and we got stuck on it for a while, either we kept finishing tasks and we kept adding on new ones, so we basically had like a net gain of 0, or it just took longer than expected. Basically, with this kind of a perspective, you can see where we get stuck in a project, right? And there's nothing to say that, okay, we have 6 left. Let's say that we finished 6 tasks in here, but our customer added 6 more. So we didn't actually gain anything project-wise. We got the task done, but it's not shown in this chart. The other side here too, so we see this kind of nice linear-ish increase in work completed. If you look at the scope, you actually get a better view of what's going on. So we started with 10 tasks, but come February, we now have 11. And then we have 12, and then 14. So we keep getting work piled on, and you can very accurately see that in your scope line here. The amount of work we're completing is actually pretty constantly upward. We're trending in the correct direction. This is basic. I mean, these two figures here are mirror images of each other. This is effectively the same, kind of amount of work that we have. We just happen to be showing different perspectives here. I personally like the burn up chart more because it gives you more information. Depending on your environment, some people might like the more simpler view. So how you would generate this kind of graph, honestly, all you really need is Excel and a histogram line, or a trend line. You can do this in Google Sheets. You can do it in basically any environment where you can plot out a line chart. There are some very nifty templates out there. So there's burn down. I don't think I have the link handy. But there are basically templates out there for generating these kinds of things. If you are interested in using, say, Sheets or Excel, but basically you just say, I've got X tasks in this month, there's my point. And so if you've ever done any kind of plotting in a spreadsheet environment, this should be pretty trivial to create. So I've given you two different perspectives here. We have the Gantt charts and we have the Agile style. Also critical path. I'm kind of curious, do you have a preference? So think of your current projects that you have going on. Do you like one versus the other? So if I asked you, which I will, it's the spoiler, to pick a planning method, what do you think you like? Hopefully this updates because I killed the Google bar there at the bottom. Agile. And again, I'm not trying to push you one way or the other. They all have their place. Let's see, I can, new task. Reset slide link for next time. Some of you like the Gantt chart, that's good. Let's give it a little poll to see where we're at. Oops. Got those people chiming in that they like Agile. Not too bad. So I guess let me ask you, because it looks like the majority, well, two-thirds of you anyway, since six responded. Why do you like Agile? Or why do you like the burn down slash burn up chart? This is the part in class where if I asked you what you prefer, I would ask you to defend why you like it. I like the idea of being able to see the progress over time. Yeah, makes sense. Plus, you have some flexibility there, right? So if you are trying to track your team's projects and their progress, you're not strictly tying them to have one task done by the end of the week, right? Seems more fluid and allows us to switch between tasks easily. Yeah, that's the key takeaway there. You do lose a lot of detail though, right? With the Gantt chart, we can see exactly when things need to be due, what their timing is, even people attached to them, right? Very, very, very detailed perspective. But with that level of detail, you lose a lot of flexibility. In a more agile world, we don't necessarily have people working on one specific task, right? I could go in one day and I'm going to implement my sprite number one, and then tomorrow I'm sick of working on a floaty character. Let's do somebody with a little spin attack. Again, it just kind of depends on what you need for your projects. Good. Glad that you're all thinking, at least kind of, trying to put yourself in the shoes of a project manager, because at some point you will become that person. Might not be tomorrow, even though you're kind of getting some experience with this in your team projects. But once you kind of get into the working world, and assuming you're going into an industry-based company, these are going to be considerations for you. And who knows, maybe by the time you are there, burn down and burn up charts are no longer cool and interesting. There might be something better out there. Or maybe we flip and go back to Gantt. Who knows? If some of you go off to GE Aviation or something like that, and you have to work on embedded systems, there's probably a good chance you do a Gantt chart based environment where things are very rigorously set in stone, very rigidly defined projects. So those are your options. And if you're going one or the other, they are both perfectly fine. Just pick the correct tool for your project and be able to generate, whichever charts that you need to show things off. Okay, so let's move on to a slightly different topic then. We got 10 minutes left. Should be able to get through all this, I hope. When we've been talking about the software design lifecycle, we've talked about all these different phases, right? From requirements analysis all the way down to maintenance and QA, all the steps in between. There is a good chance, I'm going to say a very good chance, and again, I know I've said this before, you're not going to be the one doing all of this, right? You're not going to be the requirements engineer, then you're not going to be the developer, you're not going to be the tester. You're probably going to pick a handful of roles, or sorry, be assigned a handful of roles, and you're going to have to do those. But we'll bring on people from the departments that, say, handle requirements engineering, the people that handle project management, the people that handle the customer. These are all going to be different types of personnel, effectively to use the word here on the slide. And one of the hardest things to do as a project manager anyway, is to figure out who is going to be best placed where. Okay, maybe I've got group A, you are all absolute wizards at implementing blockchain. I don't know, maybe you're our R&D department. Okay, I'm not going to have you do requirements, even though some of you are probably really good at talking with people. You're better used developing this back end, lockdown history of our projects. Maybe we're doing some kind of new cryptocurrency. Kirby coin. There we go. Some of you might not be as good at that aspect, but you're really great at user interfaces. And I can assign you to, say, the front end. Some of you, maybe you're great at finding problems in code. You are that core group of people who can break any program, right? And that's a good thing in this environment. We want you to test it. We want you to break things. Maybe at some point, the Bitcoin people, the blockchain people, sorry, they're done with their job. What do we do now? Well, maybe I can have you help out with requirements analysis. Maybe I can help you out with quality assurance, with maintenance. Or I move you on to the next project while I have other people working on this project. Basically, think of yourself kind of like a chess player in a way where you're moving all of your personnel pieces around the board to different tasks. And it becomes effectively a game of who is going to be best served where. And I'm coming at this from the project manager perspective, thinking of people as chess pieces in a way. But keep in mind, you have to keep your employees happy as well, right? Keep morale high. Morale high, not morale. Those are the delicious mushrooms that we can get around here. So there's basically kind of a balance of making sure everybody's happy with what they're working on, plus that the project is moving forward. A project manager probably going to have to be able to manage that. If I tell one of you, we don't have any more room for people working on the GUI, even though that's your passion, I really need you to help out with testing right now. You might not like that because you want to do the fun thing, and you think maybe testing isn't as exciting. Hypothetical here. And then you might have to say, well, okay, well, next project I'll have you work on the GUI, and this time I need you really at testing. Again, you have to work with people at times too. With that, you might be in the place to hire people. So, how do you pick people to work with you? And again, you could be hiring new employees. You could be bringing in people from other departments onto your project. Depending on your environment, you might try to have your team self-organize. It just kind of depends. I've seen both, where you have a project team that sticks together the whole time and they work on different projects. I've seen, like, at one point, companies were trying to do like internal Facebook self-organizing teams types of things where you'd put your portfolio up on Facebook here. Sorry, internal Facebook, which was a SharePoint site generally. I'm good at C#. I am good at embedded. And then based on your skills that you advertise, you'd be pulled into different projects. I, as somebody who really hates social media, don't like that, but I know some companies tried to make it work anyway. But if you are picking personnel for your project, first and foremost, are they actually able to do the job? Or can they be trained to do the job? More often than not everybody is going to know how to do exactly what you want them to do, right? We hire people that we feel that we can train and that we can work with, which is why hopefully as you're all going to, well, probably virtual job fairs, and it's probably not as exciting doing these things over Zoom, but your interviews more or less are going to be your people skills. How do you work with other people? If you can graduate with a 4-year degree or whatever you're getting, you probably understand how to be trained. Right? Maybe you are all Java developers, but you're trying to get a job at a Ruby company. Well, if I know that I can teach you to do Java, I can pretty easily teach you to do Ruby in a month or less, right? So a lot of these things are going to be your soft skills, and that's why we force you to do team projects to kind of get those soft skills. So, are you able to do the work? If not, can you be trained easily? Are you interested in it? If I tell you all to do something and you don't like it, you're probably going to hate working on the project. It's going to take twice as long. See Professor Fredericks's master's degree or master's thesis. Had no interest in it. It took me twice as long to do. Maybe you have experience in similar areas, so you know the tool sets, but maybe they're in C# instead of Java. Or you've worked with Eclipse, but we're using IntelliJ. Similar systems, So training you is not a hard process. But are you able to communicate effectively? Can you communicate professionally by email? Can you write good documents that are very clear to whoever needs to read it? Can you give good presentations to your team and to your customers? Last thing here, can you share responsibility? This is a very hard one to understand, but are you able to share workloads? Right? If you're in an agile environment and you say, I'm going to be the one working on the GUI, and you don't share any of those tasks because maybe you're hard to work with, maybe you feel your way is the best way, that can really hamper a project. Whereas if you're able to share tasks, share development efforts, things can actually work a lot more smoothly. So, effectively, if you're looking at the slide, work on your soft skills. That'll make you way more attractive than anything technical you can do. And I say that for the majority of companies. If you're going to somewhere like a Google or an Amazon or a very tech-heavy company, then they want you to do those kind of weird tech interviews. Then that's a different topic. But just a little soapboxing there. Make sure that you can work on a team and that you don't sound like a complete psychopath to your HR hiring people. All right. Let's see, where are we gonna end here? So let's end here. I'll stop with the slide. We'll pick that up next time. Your progress so far that we've been talking about has been tasks that you complete, right? So we saw Gantt charts, we saw burn up, burn down charts, even the critical path method. They're measured by tasks and when they are done. But your projects can be affected significantly by communication, again, which is why we work on that in here. If you have an issue with your timing, there's a good chance it wasn't because of a technical issue. Again, technical things are mechanical processes. We can work through them. Failures tend to be communication issues. And what's a communication issue? People aren't talking. People aren't expressing their ideas clearly and concisely, which is why I'm really hammering on all of you for those good, crisp requirements. Maybe we forgot to tell you a requirement that cropped up 3 months into the project. Maybe the customer changed their mind. Maybe we have two groups within a project team that hate each other. And people are difficult. If we have any kind of breakdown in communication, whether from misunderstandings, from things that are not clear, from personal issues, your projects are probably doomed to, if not fail, be extended significantly. So just kind of a key thing to worry about. And what I'm going to leave you with here is, how do you manage this? So I'm not going to say that life is all roses and peaches and perfect in the engineering world. We are going to be dealing with people, and people are difficult. The key is how you manage that. So if you're a project manager, how do you deal with two employees who are fighting? Maybe they got into an argument at the bar. Maybe somebody thought they were trying to steal their work or credits. Maybe somebody's just a bad writer and wrote crap requirements. How do you deal with this? Anyway, that is the thinking point I will leave you with. Again, we'll do our presentations on Wednesday. Any questions or concerns, please feel free to drop by office hours, drop me an email, etc., etc. Otherwise, I will see you on Zoom on Wednesday. Bye, everybody. Insert chill music. Calm Nintendo games to finish the day. That'll work. Why Yoshi's so sad looking? See ya.